What's up guys, and welcome to this video. Today we're going to continue on our series of the multiplayer component, or how to set up Jigsaw inventory system with the multiplayer component. Today we're going to take a look at equipment and how to handle, for example, picking up a weapon and equipping it to the character, and also maybe equipping a helmet from a container or from your own backpack, for example. So we'll see all of that. We're going to use some already made pickups from the demo because I want to do a separate tutorial on how to use your own pickup system. So this system supports using your own pickup class if you have one. You don't have to use the included or the demo pickup here. So the first thing I want to do here is set up the interaction system for the character, so I can interact with anything in the world, for example a pickup or like a container, etc. So that would be our first step, and for that we're going to add our in-game widget to the screen, so we can have a little crosshair in the middle of the screen, so it makes it easier to trace to things. So I'm going to open the BP character tutorial here, and by the way, if you haven't watched the first video, I strongly recommend that. The link is in the description. So the last time we handled this part right here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a sequence right here just to organize things just a little bit. So I'm going to do this, then I'm going to create the in-game widget, which also has the action bars, and the action bars we will handle at later, or maybe in this video, we'll see. It depends on how long this video takes, but for now we're going to add the in-game widget, which has, like I said, the action bar, the ammo counter, and of course this crosshair right here, which will help us better or trace to things in the world. We will talk about the action bar if we have to, or we can reserve that to another video, but it's pretty straightforward. These are going to mimic what we are equipping currently, so we'll see if we have to use it later, but for now we're simply going to add this to the screen, a simple widget. So right here we're going to select BP in-game widget right there. Only player here is the player controller, and we want to promote this to a variable, so we of course have a reference for it, and so we can use it later. So right click here, promote to a variable, and we're going to name it in-game widget, or yeah, so in-game widget is fine. Then I'm going to add that to the viewport. So we only do this if we are locally controlled. So making sure that we are locally controlled, then we can create the widget, and of course if we play, we should have our action bars at the bottom there, and also that crosshair in the middle, so we can trace to things at the map. The next part here is going to create a function that's going to be on a timer, that's going to continuously trace for things in the world. This is mainly for visual purposes only, to see what you're looking at. We can skip it if we want to, but let's just go ahead and do it. The main way to interact with objects is going to be by maybe pressing F. In that case, we're immediately trace to the object that we're looking at, so we have no delays we don't have to rely on a function that is on a timer, that it might be delayed slightly. So when we press F, we want to trace to the object immediately, and we don't want to rely on anything else. But we're going to create this function for visual purposes only. So we're going to create the function first. We're going to do trace to world. So that's going to be the function name, and we'll handle it later. We have set timer by function name right there. We're going to enter the function name, which is trace to world. We can do the timer to be 0.1, for example, and definitely looping. So let's go ahead and handle our trace to world function, which is this one right here. So we're going to simply do a line trace by channel, and we're going to use the camera location. In this case, we could use the camera component directly here, but in case you don't have a camera component, or you have multiple, we can simply do the Git Camera Manager. So Git Camera Manager should get us the current camera, or the current active camera component. So we're going to get location here, so git or camera location. There we go. So that's going to be our starting point right there, and the end point is going to be the location of the camera component plus maybe some distance. So we're going to get the rotation of the camera, get rotation, and we'll multiply that, or let's get the forward vector first. So this is basic tracing to the center or something like that. So we're going to multiply that by the distance that we want the trace to be. In our case here, we can make it 500, why not? So it's going to be visibility here. Actors to ignore. Later, maybe we'll add our equipment so they're ignored if they block visibility, that is. So we're going to use visibility. We're going to do for duration here. And if we go ahead and play, we should see our trace right there tracing. And of course, we do need to increase the distance here because we are using a spring arm. So maybe 700 here. And it should now, as you can see, trace to the center of the world, or to the center of the screen, I should say. Now, before we continue though, let's actually go ahead and add maybe a pickup here. So I'm going to add that modular rifle, like so, just to make sure or verify that we are interacting successfully with something. So as you can see there, so it should show the name or add some text to the screen. It depends on what you want your interaction system to be. You don't have to necessarily use what I have here in the demo. So here we're kind of doing things from scratch. So this is where you would maybe do your preference here. First of all, we're going to, of course, see if we hit something. If we do hit something, we're going to break here. This is the actor. For now, I'm going to do promote to a variable here. I'm going to do current trace, for example, actor. Okay, so I need this for later. So when it comes to interactables here, pickups, loot containers, even the character, they implement the interaction interface. So everything that we are able to interact with should implement that interface. So if we open this modular rifle and go to the blueprint class settings, we should see here that we also have that BP MP interact interface. So also the loot container, vendors, crafting station, everything implement this interface. And this is how we communicate with objects in the world. And so one function that is inside that interface is can interact. So we're going to get from this hit actor, we're going to do can interact. So jig can interact. So before we can do this, we can also verify that it's not the same actor that we're interacting with. Since this function is going to keep looping, it might be the same actor that we're already interacting with currently. So we're going to make sure that this is not equal to this first before proceeding. So if that's the case, then we're going to proceed. Also, before continuing, we're going to end the interaction with this if it's already if it's valid, of course. So we're going to do a sequence, and we're going to simply check if this is valid. So we're going to call the on end interact. So we want to end the interaction if we previously interacted with something or started the interaction with something. Also, if we didn't hit anything here, we're also going to do the same thing here. Very important. So continuing on here, if we can interact with it, we're going to do the begin interact. We're going to set, of course, this like so, and it's going to be the hit actor right there. There you go. So we're going to set that from the hit actor, and we're going to execute the begin interact. So make sure you call the message version here. So it's an interface message here, as you can as the symbol indicates here. The interacting actor is, of course, our character. In this case, is self. And let's not forget to clear this reference like here. Very important. And then if we go ahead and play here, as you can see, if we look at the rifle, we'll see that text. And if we look away, of course, it's going to not show. So this is visually for visual purposes only. It's not going to achieve anything. This is where you implement the interface on your pickup class, and you handle these two interfaces. And based on if you start the interaction, maybe you add a text to the screen or something like that. So now we're going to actually interact with the character, and for that we're going to, for example, add the F key here. So if, and we're going to make a function here called maybe interact with object, or try interact. So try to interact maybe. In this function, we're going to do pretty much the same thing here. We're going to line trace to an object like so. So in this case, like I said, we are tracing once again. We don't want to rely on this reference because it could be delayed. since the timer is on a 0.1 delay. In this case, if we hit F, we immediately want to trace to see what we're looking at. So if this is true, which means we hit something, we're going to once again do the can interact, jig can interact, and if we can, we're going to execute the interaction interface. We're going to maybe promote this to another variable. Maybe we can name it current interact after, for example. So we'll do it this way, and then we will run the execute interact interface. Once again, we're going to take the message version here. So this time we're not going to do the begin interact. We're going to actually execute the interact to tell this actor that we would like to execute the interaction. So the this once again is self. Now this this system right here should work for everything, pickups, loot containers, crafting station, etc. So everything should pretty much work, and they handle the interaction side of things, and they'll do their own logic. So we'll talk about everything in that regard in our next videos, but for the time being we're going to talk about pickups. So when we interact with a pickup, it's going to execute an interface here called, if I just look for pickup here, we have on pickup interact executed. So when we interact with a pickup, it's going to execute this interface on the character that's interacting with it. So if I just go ahead and print something here, now of course for this to run we actually have to call the function here. So when we press F, we're going to do the try interact there, and if I look at the object and press F, as you can see there on the top left, you can see a print message, and this is where you handle what to do with this pickup. This is where maybe you want to add it to your inventory. In our case here, we're going to ask the server that we want to pick up this item or potentially equip it. If we open the main pickup class, as you can see, these are the interfaces, and so this is the begin and end. It's simply just showing the widget here. So this is for visual purposes only, but when we execute the interact, it executes that interface on our character. So the first thing we can do here is, let me actually just go ahead and do a sequence here and return like that. So we have the pickup reference in this case, and we can decide what to do with it. We can equip it to the character if we can. We can add it to an empty space if we have maybe a backpack. So we can do anything with this pickup reference here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to see if I can equip this reference first. If I can't, then I'm going to try to add it to the inventory. So in order to check if we can add something to or equip something to our character, we're going to use, of course, the bpjig multiplayer, and we're going to run a function called gsi try equip to main. This function will try to equip the item. Well, it will not try, it will actually just check if we can equip the item to our main, of course, containers, like helmet, armor. These are our main containers. So this work right here is going to try and see if we can equip it somewhere. In our case here, we can equip it to our primary. So in that case, then we can ask the server to equip this weapon to our primary, for example. So we're going to pass this pickup reference right here, and I don't like to wire things here from functions, so I usually just look for this parameter. So I can just do var pickup ref, and I can get this as a local variable, which is much cleaner. If this is valid, then that means we can equip this item somewhere. In this case, we can ask the server to equip that item. So we're going to do server request equip actor to container. So this function right here asks the server that we want to equip a pickup to one of our main containers. Could be primary, could be secondary, helmet, etc., depending on what container is empty. And of course, the server knows what is equipped to your character or not. It's not just going to take your word for it. It's going to check if that is possible before doing anything. So the actor reference is this right here, and the container UID is going to be the container ID here. So container ID And that's pretty much it. So if I go ahead and play and just press F, as you can see, the weapon is equipped to my character. And I can, of course, inspect it. I can also, like, inventory side of thing is working perfectly. We can, if I had a backpack here, I could equip some of these attachments and they will reflect on the weapon, etc. So the inventory works by default. So everything is already replicated. And the only thing that we need to handle is actually equipping the weapon to our character. As you can see there, the weapon is still on the ground, so we need to attach it to our character and maybe destroy it, depending on your preference here. Let's go and add a backpack here so we can at least have a backpack. So it should work for the backpack as well. As you can see, it got equipped to our character. We haven't handled the showing the content of a container here somewhere here, so we'll handle that later. But for now, let's just make sure that, for example, the weapon here is attached to our character. So when an item is equipped to our character successfully, another interface function is called or executed on our character from the BP-Jig multiplayer. And that's where you handle maybe attaching the weapon to your character or destroying it, etc. So, and of course that is server side. So that's going to be in the MP component interface. So the function is jig MP on item equip. This function right here triggers when you equip something a pickup to your character. So in this case, this will trigger, and here you have the reference, the actual reference, the same reference of course. Container name, where it got equipped. Once again, if we go to the jig multiplayer, you can see this is our container name. This is, of course, you chose that container name. So in this case, it's going to say primary here. We have the primary here. So it's going to say primary. It's going to give us the unique ID and item info here. So if we need the item ID of the item, where it is, count, vector, weight, price, etc. We can also, if we need the full information about the item, we can also get the data table, get row here. And we have, of course, all the information necessary to get the if item info if we want to. But in our case here, so what you can do here is, as an example, just to make sure that this is triggered, we can, for example, destroy the actor here. So if I just call this, just to see that it's triggered. So if I press F, as you can see, the item disappeared there. And of course, it's equipped to our character in our inventory, but this is where you decide what to do. What I like to do here is just do a switch on this, switch on name. And what you can do here is you can go to the details panel here and just add your pin names. I'm going to check off that one, and I'm going to add the names of my main containers. So in this case, I'm going to do primary there, if I can spell primary. The second one is secondary, and of course these once again are the container names that you chose and your multiplayer component, etc, etc. So it should be pretty much the same thing. So before attaching the actual reference here, you want to turn off physics, of course. So we have an interface called jig sit can interact, and this will turn off physics. So we're going to do can interact. So of course we also do this disable the interaction because the item is equipped. So these both of these should be false. So you can't interact with the object anymore because it's equipped, and the physics are disabled here. And of course, once we do that, and once again, let me actually just go ahead and do the var actual ref, like so. So once I do this, I can attach this pickup right here to my character. So I can do attach to component, which is attach actor to component in this case, and we're going to attach it to our mesh. And the socket name here, I have a modular rifle back socket and my mesh here. So location and rotation should be snap to target. And if I go ahead and play here, as you can see, the weapon now is attached to the player. So very straightforward. This is where you decide what kind of implementation you want to have in your character. You can also check the BP jig character blueprint and see how we did it here. Let me actually just bring it here. So in this case, we're pretty much doing the same thing. We also have a dictionary here that keeps track of what is equipped. We also have this function right here that we use to save the information about what is equipped. So later I can maybe update the durability if my armor took some damage, or or if my weapon loses some durability, or just to know what is equipped currently to the character. So definitely take a look at this same function, same interface function, and go ahead and create the same dictionary like shown here, and simply call this function or copy this function right here. And this video is just to show you how the logic is set up, but of course the implementation could be different. You could definitely do something totally different. And for sockets here, now once again, this definitely comes down to how you want to do this as well. But in the demo here, we have a data table. If I go to pickups here, data tables, and we have a data table called DT equipment mesh data. So what I do here is I simply add the item. So for example, modular rifle, and it has a struct where I can simply indicate the same item ID, which is modular rifle there, and I can indicate the socket where the pickup should be equipped. In this case, if it's equipped to my main, or if it's the active weapon, then it's going to be equipped to modular rifle socket. If not, then it's going to be on the back. If it's a secondary weapon, it's going to be on modular rifle back 2. So we're going to use this data table to determine what socket to use to attach the weapon. So it's going to be DT equipment mesh data, and it's also the same for helmet, for example. This is where you indicate what skeletal mesh is equipped to the character. So in this case, instead of doing, and once again, you can make a function to get the sockets as well. In fact, let's actually go ahead and do that. So let's just do get sockets, for example, get data table row, and it's going to use that same data table right here. So select that and click here. So the row name here is going to paste it there, and it's going to return a well, it's going, let's go ahead and actually break that so it gives us the result. So it's going to return this the equipment mesh data structure. So we're going to use this function right here, so get sockets like so, and simply give it the item here. So it's going to be coming from info here, so var info once again, get the variable like so, and that's going to be the item ID. So using this item ID is going to give us the sockets right here. So definitely here in this case we do want to equip it to this because it's equipped to our primary. If it's equipped to our secondary, we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to select this socket. Now if you want to equip it as an active weapon, for example, you don't want to put it in your back, you actually want to equip it to your hand directly when you pick it up off the ground, in that case I would use this socket right here. So with this right here, we should get the same result as you can see there. Now same thing for our backpack here. Let's actually go ahead and add backpack here. In this case, for our backpack, we can go, we can either equip the backpack itself. So in this case, it's actually going to be pretty much the same thing. We can just plug that there. And if we just equip that, as you can see, the backpack gets equipped. If the item, or in case we want to equip maybe a skeletal mesh to our character, in this case we could just get the skeletal mesh from here and set that skeletal. So let's go ahead and actually do it with the, so for example, we can handle pants in this case. So in case of pants, we don't want to equip the actor itself. We can actually destroy it and set a skeletal mesh maybe. So we can add a skeletal mesh component to our as a child of our main mesh. We can call it, for example, pants. Why not? And of course, in the construction script here, you definitely want to set the master pose here. So set master pose component. So this one actually going to be the mesh. So the master pose of pants would be the mesh, so it follows the animation of the mesh. So in this case, if it's pants, we're going to do the same thing here. We're not going to do any of this. We're not going to attach or anything. We can, once again, if you want to use my data table, go for it. We can do it here. But the main idea here is that you want to destroy the actor because we're done with it. We don't want to attach the actor or anything. So we're going to destroy the actor because it's pants, and instead we're going to do set skeletal mesh here, and it's going to be pants, of course, as you can see there. So if I go ahead and play and equip the pants, as you can see, they get equipped to my character. And once again, this is where you decide what kind of implementation you want to do here. We could use this, like I said, my data table, and get the pans from here. Since we in this data table we have pans like right here. If I can find pans, actually, here we go. So we already have this skeletal mesh there set, so I can use the same method here, get sockets like so, and I can essentially just use the data table as a way to set what gets equipped here. So if we play right here, we should get the same result. There are multiple ways to handle this, but the main idea here is that you use this interface function to control what happens when a certain item is equipped. So this interface function triggers when you equip a pickup off the ground. So when you equip something from another container, such as maybe a loot container or your backpack, or maybe have it as a starting item, there's another function here that triggers, which is on main container item added. On container item added, this will trigger when you equip something from a loot container or from something other than a pickup. It could be a loot container, it could be your own inventory, from a backpack, from a stash, for example. So this right here will trigger, and it pretty much has the same thing minus the actual reference, because the item is inside some inventory. It doesn't have to exist physically in the world because it's not a pickup. So in this case, you do need to spawn the item. It depends, of course, if it has to be physically available or present. So in this case, this will trigger because we have a helmet equipped by default to our character. So two containers, so you get from main to and two. For example, if you swap your primary and secondary weapons, this will be like, for example, two would be your secondary and from would be primary. So this means that you moved your primary weapon to your secondary, etc. So two container here, two container name is what we're interested here. And as you can see, that says top left there says helmet. So we can do pretty much the same thing here. If it is a helmet, we're gonna do the same thing here. So I can pretty much do the same thing here. So if it is a helmet, I will get the attachment info or whatever equipment that I need to equip from that data table. So var info, yeah, so I can simply get the, well, in this case we have pants, we can do helmet there. And of course I need to also add it as a target here. Now of course this doesn't have to be a skeletal mesh, but this is just an example. It could be a static mesh, for example, but in this case, for this example, we're going to have it as a skeletal mesh there because we have a skeletal mesh helmet, and we simply want to do set skeletal mesh there. It's going to be coming from our data table right there. So if I go ahead and play, as you can see, my character now has a helmet equipped. And the same thing would happen if I equip the helmet from like a container or from my backpack. So when it comes to equipment that needs to be spawned, for example, if I have that modular rifle as a starting item, so if I just go to here, starting item, and just simply indicate that modular rifle, and it's going to be in the weapons data table. So modular rifle is equipped by default to my character, and I also added some default attachments like a stock. Of course, the stock is inside the data table attachments, and the type is stock. So we're going to talk about these in details in our next videos, where we handle adding maybe like a rifle with attachments, etc., and how to set them up to appear inside a loot container with attachments already installed. So things like that. For the time being, our character should spawn with a or should have a rifle equipped by default, but we don't see it on the character, and that's where this function right here is also used, which is the, of course, main container item added. So in this case, we want to spawn the item because it doesn't exist. So when you equip something from another container, from a loot container, obviously the rifle is not spawned in the world, so you have to spawn it. The only exception to that is, for example, if you're moving your primary weapon to your secondary slot. In that case, your primary weapon is already exists, so you simply move it. So you simply attach to another socket, or you simply move the references around. And to verify that, of course, you need to check if this is primary or secondary, and also this is primary or secondary. You can check the main Git character to see how we did that. For the time being here, we know that we don't have a primary, So what we're going to do here is we're going to get the class, the actor class from the data table. So we're going to do git row, get data table row. That's the item ID, and we're going to break the if item info, which should have the actor class like so. So we can hide there, look for actor class, and only show that. So this is from the data table, of course, and we'll simply spawn this actor. So we're going to spawn actor from class like so. So once we spawn this, I'm going to promote to a local variable. I'm going to do spawned actor. And then, of course, by default, I'm going to disable physics and interaction because this is going to be attached and equipped to my character. So once again, the same interface here, jig sit interact, and of course, false for both of them. Of course, get the sockets like so. And once again, just the same thing, just attach the weapon to my character. But of course, there's one extra step that we need to do is we need to see if there's any attachments on this weapon, and also of course install them physically on the weapon, but we'll attach the weapon first. So attach to component, attach actor to component, and this is going to be, I'm going to equip it here. The parent is going to be the mesh once again, so snap to target, and the target of course is the spawned actor. And we can already try here, and as you can see, the weapon is indeed spawned and attached to the character by default. So now we need to install the attachments on the weapon physically. So as you can see there, the weapon doesn't appear to have any attachments installed, and we definitely have some attachments set by default on our multiplayer component there, as you can see here. So we have a bunch of attachments. So all of these need to be installed on the weapon. So for that, we have a unique ID here, like so. So item unique ID, which is rifle unique ID. So we need to do git attachments. So we need to call a git list of attachments, and this from the multiplayer component var item ID, IMUID, there you go. So this will give us all of the attachments that are installed on the weapon, and we have their item ID here. Inside the firearm class, there's an interface called BP weapon attachments, and that handles installing attachments based on an item ID. So you can open the firearm class and see how that's handled. And we'll talk about that on a future video. For now, we're going to call the interface jig attachment installed, and this will take in an item ID there. But we can do a for each, of course, and simply call this function right here. And finally, we need to return the spawned actor. So we need to return the actor reference here. So it's of course set inside the inventory data. So this is very important. So for example, when you install some other attachment, the component will find this reference and execute something similar to this, so the attachment is installed. So right now, hopefully we should be able to see, as you can see there, our character has the weapon equipped and all of its attachments are there. So the same concept applies to anything else. If it's an actor that needs to spawn, then this is pretty much the logic that you need to follow. This right here is only if it's a firearm, but we know that primary is a firearm. But if it's not a firearm, you can simply just spawn the actor, disable physics, and just attach the item, and that's pretty much it. If it doesn't have to spawn, then you can simply maybe set some mesh, skeletal mesh or something, or a static mesh. Once again, you can look inside the BPJig character and see how we handled everything. Now, when it comes to equipment, there are some other functions as well. So we have the on request drop item. This is called when you drop an item. So for example, right here, we have our helmet. If I do drop the helmet, as you can see, it does get inequipped, but we need to also handle that inside here. So MP on request drop item. This is where, once again, based on the container name, you, this time, instead of equipping something, you inequip something. So for example here, we know that it's going to be a helmet. So once again, we can simply follow the same logic here. If it's a helmet, we know what to do here. So helmet, we simply just clear the skeletal mesh like so. So that's as simple as that. So there, and it's going to be, as you can see there, it removes the helmet from our character. But of course, in this case, what we need to do here is we actually need to spawn the item if it doesn't exist. So for a helmet, we know that it doesn't exist. So for a helmet here, what we can do here is once again, we do have everything here. So we're going to get the So I'm going to simply do the same thing here. So I have the item info there, and so I'm just going to get the actor class from the data table, and I'm going to spawn, of course, the item here. For the location here, I can do get actor location, and there you go. So this would be for a helmet, for example. So if I go ahead and do this, there is my helmet spawned there, and I can pick it up again if I want to. It gets equipped to my character. So this is of course for a helmet, because a helmet doesn't exist, so you have to spawn it again. But for a primary, we know that the primary exists because we equipped it here. So what we need to do here is we need to promote this to a variable and remember it. So promote to variable, and I'm going to call it primary ref. So like so, and also need to be done here in the added. So if it's a primary, and if I spawn it, there you go, it definitely needs to be set here. So I'm gonna do it here, like so. And of course you clear this reference when the item gets removed or dropped. So in this case, when the item is dropped, so I will move the item to the world, but at the end I will clear the reference. So what we need to do here is we need to detach. So detach this rifle from the character. We're going to detach, then move the rifle. So set actor location. We could teleport it, why not? Of course, I can use the same thing here. And finally, you want to, of course, enable physics. So jig sit can interact in this case. So when you drop the item, you want to enable both of them, because previously we disabled them when we equip the item. And one more thing here, for your server and client events to work on your rifle, you need to set the owner, and this should be set here. So set owner, and the owner in this case is going to be us, so self. So once again, the same thing here for the item equipped. So item equipped, so if it's a primary, set owner. So you usually set the owner. So like I said, the server and client events work inside the weapon class itself. So you have to be the owner of something to be able to execute server and client events. So in this case, when we drop the rifle, we're going to detach it, move it in front of the character, enable physics, and of course clear the owner. So set owner to nothing. And also very important, when you drop an item, it has to preserve its content, and that's why you return it here after you drop it. So that's going to be equip primary, of course. So we drop the item, of course, we need to return the reference, whether we spawned it or we already have it. So when the item is dropped, its content is transferred to it. So of course, this makes it so that if we drop the item here, so this weapon has attachments, so if I drop it, I can see the attachments are still on. I equip it again, it still has the same attachments. So always make sure you handle the return nodes here, return the reference that it's asked, mainly in the drop request. So you want to return the reference here if you spawn it or if you have it already, of course. So the other function here is item removed. Now this item removed right here is triggered when you in-equip something to another container. For example, you have a helmet and you in-equip it to your backpack. So this one will trigger. And you're going to pretty much do the same thing, except that you're probably going to destroy the item because, so for example, a primary weapon, if you in-equip it to a loot container or to your own backpack, then there's no reason for it to stay in the world. You can just probably destroy it and then spawn it back when you equip it again. Of course, this depends on what you want to do, but this is where you would handle it. So before we do this, let's go ahead and handle showing the content of containers inside our inventory widget. We're going back here to our main inventory. So what we can do here is we're going to simply use the event initialize. So event on initialize, which triggers once the widget is created. You can also use the event construct, but the construct triggers every time you open the widget. So you maybe want to do a do once here, but I usually just like to use the event on initialize here. So what you can do here is we can, for example, we know that the backpack has a container, usually has a container. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a vertical box where I'm going to add the my equipment content. So we can do it here. For example, I can name it, for example, equip content. And of course, you definitely want to make it a variable so we can access it in the blueprint there. So we can add our content here. So just to show you the method here. So what you want to do here is you want to do assign. So you want to look for assign equip. So we have the assign drop info on item equipped change. And of course, if you do assign, it's going to add the bind and the event automatically here. So what you want to do here, and we can do it for multiple containers at once, but for now we're just testing with backpack. So what you want to do here is you want to check if the item is equipped. So if it's true, this is the item, of course. We can simply do git one container. So this one will return the container content. This could be a special container or a regular JSI container. So what you want to do here is we're simply going to, for the time being, just add it here. So we're going to get that equip vertical box there. I'm going to do add, so add child, like so. And of course we plug in the content. So if I equip the backpack, as you can see, there's my content right there. So instead of actually adding to a vertical box, we're going to create the equipment content widget. So create widget here. It's going to be, if I just look for content, I have the BP equip to content, and that's what I'm going to create here. The equip to ref here is going to be this container right here, just to later, if you want to remove this widget, we can check by this reference right here. So what you want to do next is to call the setup content, and this will allow us to plug in this content right here and give it a name, for example, backpack, or also we can get the info here from this item itself. So if it's a backpack, we can display the name, but for now I'm just going to write backpack there. And then finally, of course, we want to add it to the vertical box right there. So add child, and of course the child this time is going to be this right here. So if we try this like that, as you can see, now we have this nice, of course this handles of course collapsing and showing the content and also displaying the weight. But of course later we want to be able to remove this widget when the backpack is unequipped. Now what we can do here is we can simply promote this to a variable. So we can just call it backpack content and add this right here just to clean things up a little bit. So later here we can simply do remove from parent like so, and we should now be able to simply, of course, when we equip it, we see the backpack there. If I drop it there, it disappears. So you can also do the same thing here for other containers. You can also plug the same or handle multiple containers at once. For example, if I have armor as well, I can also do it here, and this event will trigger for both of them. If you do it this way, of course, instead of a single variable, you are going to need an array. You can take a look at the demo main inventory to see how that's handled. You can also keep things clean and just do separate things up here, so you know for sure what you're working with there. So now that we have our backpack content shown, we can of course talk about some other functions here. So the item removed here, which is of course this one right here. So if I just go ahead and do print here, so if I equip the backpack here and inequip the helmet to my inventory, then that function triggers, and that's where you want to handle this part. So once again, you can do something like this, and of course if it's a primary, like I said, so I can simply destroy the actor here. Since it's inequipped to a container, it doesn't necessarily have to stay. So if I go ahead and test here, I should be able to simply destroy the actor when I inequip it here. So if I go there, as you can see, my primary is gone. And of course, if I equip it back, it should appear there because that's already handled. So me equipping something from a container to my main equipment, that is what, that's this function right here, the container, main container item added. This right here is you inequipping to your backpack, for example, or some loot container. So this is where you handle this. You probably just want to destroy the item if it exists. If it's a helmet, of course, you just want to clear that reference. So if it's a helmet, just set skeletal mesh to nothing, and that should do it in this case. So helmet right here, I can just simply like do this and it should be cleared. So I think that's pretty much it for this video. This was just meant to give you the how the logic is handled. If you want to see fully how we handled everything, of course, check out the jig character, the character that we're using inside the demo, and the same logic, the same functions are used, and you can see there how everything is set up. But generally speaking here, you should be able to use this with any pickup system you have. We'll see how you can use your own pickup system later. You can see here we're just working with actor references, nothing specific here. So you should be able to use your own pickup system if you want. Well, we'll see that in another video. For the time being, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to watch the other videos to learn more about the system. So until then, thank you for watching. Stay safe. See you later. Goodbye.